really take on the challenges of presence and locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course, something we thought we could perfectly achieve, but the idea was that if we stopped using just a rain sound and instead used lots of 3D audio sources for raindrops hitting the ground at all sorts of locations around you, then at some point your brain would take a leap and you'd begin to have this feeling of real presence inside the virtual world of the game.
All right, here we go. Fun fact time. If there's one thing that'll rile up those PC gamers hating on the PS5 and PS5 Pro, it's this. You know the drill? They love saying, why buy a PS5 Pro? No games, just the same old titles, right? Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, Sony's dropping more titles on the PS5 than anywhere else. And here's the irony. PC gamers are over here, hyped for PS5 games they'll finally get 2 years later. Kind of poetic, huh? Because let's be real, PC isn't exactly swimming in exclusives. Sure, they've got Xbox games, but when was the last time Xbox truly had an exclusive? And yeah, the new 5070's on its way. But what's that for? Playing the same games you could have been enjoying on a PS5. Look, I could go all day with this, so let me hit you with a little story. There was this guy once who said, Steam is superior, bro. You've got 500,000 quality games there. Really? Really, brother? 500,000 quality games on Steam? Listen, I'm not exactly living in a cave. You think I don't have access to Steam? I've got a laptop that, on paper, should be able to run circles around my base PS5. And yet, you know how many games I play on it? Exactly 0. Why? Because it's annoying. Too much tweaking, settings, patches. It's a workstation, not a chill station. Sure, I've dabbled, modded GTA 4, pushed it above 60 FPS, the whole deal. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't care about gaming on my work setup. And newsflash, most of those 500,000 games on Steam are pretty much landfill material. Meanwhile, you look at what's actually selling on PC these days. It's Sony IPs like Helldivers 2, just taking over. Oh, and to anyone who's like, but Concord flopped. Cool, here's a candy. Moving on. Now here's where the PS5 just owns any PC rig, no matter the specs, the social flex. Picture this, you've got a PS5 in your living room, right next to the TV. Friends come over, they see it, and immediately it's, whoa, is that a PS5? What games you got? And me? I'm like, all of them. It was the same with my PS4 Slim back in the day. Out of nowhere, we're grabbing controllers and firing up Mortal Kombat 11, Tekken, maybe a little Team Sonic Racing. That's the vibe. Meanwhile, let's be real. Most PC gamers keep their rigs hidden away in a bedroom, buried under RGB light. You're not keeping a tower PC in the living room hooked up to a 65-inch TV. And if you do, you're probably a bit of a unicorn. And even if you are that unicorn, tell me, when was the last time someone walked in, saw your setup, and said, wow, is that an RTX 4070 rig with an i7 and 32 gigabytes RAM? How many FPS you pulling on that thing? Answer, no one ever. And here's the other thing. PC gamers are all about tweaking instead of actually enjoying the game. They've got one eye on the FPS counter, always in the corner of the screen, and the second those frames dip below 100, it's chaos. They're not even in the game anymore. They're in troubleshooting mode. It's like, pause everything, gotta fix this. So you close the game, hit up the forums, update drivers, adjust the settings, and by the time you're done, whatever excitement you had for playing, gone. Meanwhile, on the PS5, I'm kicking back, hitting that 4K at 60 FPS and just playing. No stutters, no tinkering, no FPS counters stressing me out, just straight up gaming as it should be. And you know what really cracks me up? Those comments where someone's like, bro, you have to check out this mod on Cyberpunk 2077. It's god-tier PC gaming. Yeah, it is true that some of these mods look insane, but you know why they get 5 million views? Because 99% of those people will never run it themselves. They're just out here watching videos of somebody else's $5,000 rig and pretending that somehow they get bragging rights. It's like flexing your neighbor's Ferrari. You're watching from the curb, but that's it. Honestly, I could drop the cash for a $5,000 setup, load it with insane mods, get some flashy footage, and probably make bank on YouTube just off the ad revenue alone. But other than that, almost no one cares enough to justify it. And here's the kicker. By the time PS6 comes along to games like Cyberpunk, it'll probably be optimized so well that it'll hit that same level of performance without needing a 5K setup from 2023. Not possible, you say? Do your research, or stick till the end and hear what Mark Cerny, the chief PlayStation architect, has to say about how they design games and how they push the industry forward with every new generation. 90% of PC gamers are running rigs weaker than the PS5. And honestly, one of my guilty pleasures? Scrolling through YouTube for those videos where someone tries running a PS5 port on a $500 PC. It's like comedy gold. You've got them pushing settings to low and hoping for a miracle, while the game chugs along, looking like it's about to go on strike. It's pure entertainment, watching them try to squeeze every last pixel out of their budget build, only to realize, yeah, PS5's plug-and-play magic has its perks. The emulator warriors. PC gamers love to talk about all the games they can play through emulation. Bro, I can play PS2 games in 4K. Yeah, but didn't you already play those like a decade ago? And here you are, modding community flex with little playtime. The PC modding community loves flexing mods, like it's an art form. But let's be real, how much time do they actually spend gaming? They'll spend 3 days modding Skyrim for a realistic look, but never make it past the intro because they're too busy tweaking their water physics. Like, is this gaming or just a very high-stakes arts and crafts project? PC gamers have the whole setup. Gaming chairs that look like race cars, wrist guards, and custom mechanical keyboards that sound like machine guns. All that gear just to play the same games at a slightly higher frame rate? Meanwhile, I'm sitting on my couch, controller in hand, and the only setup I need is, well, my PS5. Who knew relaxation could be next gen? Specs that sound like a resume. When PC gamers talk specs, it sounds like they're reading off their resume. Yeah, I got an i9 with 64 gigabytes RAM, liquid cooling, dual 4090s, and an NVMe SSD setup. And I'm over here thinking, are you playing games or piloting a spaceship? They're so caught up in the tech that they forget the game. Themselves are what we're here for. The frame rate FOMO. PC gamers love to hate on consoles for capped frame rates, but I swear their FOMO kicks in every time they see a frame dip. They're constantly checking the FPS counter like it's a stock ticker. Meanwhile, on PS5, I'm not watching numbers. I'm too busy actually gaming. The silent party gamer. You know, PS5 is the ultimate party console. Anyone can just pick up a controller and jump in, but imagine handing someone a mouse and keyboard at a party. Hey, can you remap these keys for me so I can join? Yeah, sure, party's over. Consoles are for anyone. PC setups are just for someone, usually the guy trying to explain why his rig's cooling system is so impressive. The PC gamer's social life is basically forums. PC gamers love talking about how they're connected to the whole world through online communities, but half of that time is spent arguing in forums about which monitor is best. Meanwhile, console gamers are connected in the real world with real friends, just passing a controller and sharing laughs. Forums are cool, but they're no substitute for the couch co-op vibe, while the PC crowd is still optimizing shadows. But I want to introduce you to someone who's more qualified than me. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mark Cerny, the architect. When making consoles, we're not trying to build low-cost PCs. I have been very surprised by the degree to which developers are using ray tracing, he begins. Putting that in, that was a big decision, and actually a rather late one. I thought that this is not going to get much use initially, but if we look at generations, and a generation is 7 years or so, software is created for 10 years. And so later in the life cycle, we will start seeing people using that technology. But instead, we had launch titles that were taking advantage of it. I guess having worked on games for consoles that were a bit difficult to get into, like the PlayStation 3, I can be a little skittish about very deep technology like that. But in this case, my guess as to how things would go was totally wrong, and I am so happy to have seen the early adoption of the technology. The other thing that has been surprising is the push to 60 frames per second. Based on previous console life cycles, I would have expected there to be a lot more games that are 30 frames per second only, just because the artwork can be so much more detailed if you have longer time to render it. Instead, the almost universal rule this time around has been the games run at 60. It's great from a play perspective. Gamers overwhelmingly prefer games that are higher frame rates. I just didn't expect such a departure from previous generations. Cerny says building a console takes about 4 years, and nowadays that's less time than it takes to make some of the big AAA titles. There is a lot of focus right now on the time it takes to build these games, and I see people asking if the time to triangle has been greatly reduced, why is it then taking so many years to create a game? And the answer is that is what the teams are choosing to do. They are going after these massive creations that really do need 4 or 6 years to put together. One of the exciting aspects of console hardware design is that we have freedom with regards to what we put in the console, Cerny begins. Or to put that differently, we're not trying to build a low-cost PC, and we aren't bound by any particular standards. So, if we have a brainstorm that audio can become much more immersive and dimensional if there's a dedicated unit that's capable of complex math, then we can do that. Or, if the future feels like high-speed SSDs rather than HDDs, we can put an end-to-end system in the console, everything from the flash dies to the software interfaces that the game creators use, and get 100% adoption. I like to think that occasionally we're even showing the way for the larger industry, and that our efforts end up benefiting those gaming on PC as well. It's a tech-heavy example, but on PS4 we had very efficient GPU interfaces, and that may well have spurred DirectX to become more efficient in response. Or to look at something more consumer-focused, I believe that releasing PS5 in 2020 with a very high-performance integrated SSD put pressure on the PC world to get their corresponding direct storage API into the hands of their gamers. He points to an amusing video by Linus Tech Tips, which attempted to kill the PlayStation 5 by building a $500 gaming PC that outperformed the console. They had to get a used motherboard, he says. That was the only way that they could build a PlayStation 5 equivalent for a PlayStation 5 price. And if you're using used parts, well, you can get a used PlayStation 5 for eBay for $300 something. I think as long as we continue to create that very nice package, the future of consoles is pretty bright. It's awesome to see so many people making the jump to the PS5 Pro, and the reasons behind it paint a clear picture of what's happening in gaming right now. For a lot of folks, it's all about getting a reliable powerhouse without the PC hassle. And if you say nobody is switching to the PS5 Pro, that's a lie. Well, you should see the hundreds of comments I've gotten on my small channel. Here are just a few examples. Thor86 who's been satisfied with their base PS5 for years, but wants to take things up a notch with the Pro. Or at King Scott O, who puts it simply, PS5 Pro is just the best box out there right now. And really, it's hard to argue when you're getting better frame rates, ray tracing, and a next-level experience on a console. Others, like at Icer03000, are even seeing their PC friends making the switch. Why? They're done dealing with constant upgrades, driver updates, and performance tweaking. With PS5 Pro, you're getting smooth gameplay, VR support, and no need for a full gaming PC setup to stay current. Then there's at Leo Davis 519, going for the best of the best, because right now, nothing is topping the PS5 Pro at this price point. Some are even retiring their older consoles, like at Alex Pimentel, who's sending their PS4 into well-earned retirement and upgrading to the Pro. And then you have players like at Dope Zeppelin, who already have a gaming PC, but realize they're still gravitating back to console for the hassle-free experience. In the end, the PS5 Pro's appeal is undeniable. It's powerful, it's polished, and it's giving people everything they want in a gaming experience without the typical PC headaches. Yeah, I agree with the comment you mentioned. I bought a powerful PC 5 years ago, and it was a major pain in the ass. I absolutely hated wasting time troubleshooting and tweaking graphical settings. I just have no interest in PCs, and am not good with them. Just give me a console where games are designed for that console and save me the trouble and time.
This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from, to the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you further in the game, and it can also directly enhance the gameplay. To use Dead Space as an example, I know, old school, you're fighting enemies in fairly dark, spooky locations.